It's time to be woke, take off your shades, it helps see through the smoke, cause the wicked hide behind the cloak, and if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked, so listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't, is this the fog or smog, cause there's a difference when you breathe it in, so don't let the corporate media take you for a spin, this that morning show, they put you in the know, so I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, 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 yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speeding the fact.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair Up the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy. It's Monday. What can I say? We have a huge show for you. It is got lots and lots of gallons to it. And you might ask me, what are you talking about? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about, water. We are talking about how the capitalists are running out of things to make money off of, and how what's going to occur in the water industry in the next little while is critical to what a lot of people think is the survival of our species. And maybe not in the West right away, but certainly long term. And there's a lot more places in the world that are a little more vulnerable than we are. But we're all that stuff going to get into this morning. So let's start by introducing my lovely and talented co-host, Miss Kerri Barber. Good morning, Kerri.
Good morning, Andy. And I already have a pushback on that. Yes, it is starting in the West right now. It has been going on, and that is why we're going to talk about it this morning. So absolutely. Good morning to you, everybody. Happy Monday. And typically on a Monday, I try to bring a neutral, if not a positive story, because Monday sucks. But with this one, even though it could be taken as a massive negative, which it kind of is. I want to leave you with some thoughts about proactive things that you can do in this particular issue. So we've got a lot to cover this morning. So let's get into the administrivia real quick. First, if this is your first time seeing us, welcome. We do things a little bit different here, and you'll see that. First of all, we're live and interactive. So if you type a comment in the chat, we'll see it, particularly on our Facebook page. And we want you to weigh in on the discussion. If you think that I say something that's wrong, or you disagree, or maybe you've got a resource or a suggestion that you want to share with our audience, please feel free to do that. Second, I know that there are a lot of pundits out there who like to do the clickbaity scream and yell and push back on something that they've seen and then walk away. We are not that show. What we do here is encourage critical thinking and take things in a deeper dive. So Annie and I work very, very hard to put this together for you. And it's not, I will never just jump on here and start talking. There's always a lot of research that goes into it. So if you're tuning in and you see all the links that were just posted, these are some of the resources that I have gone through, vetted, read, and I offer them back to you. It's not everything. So it takes hours to put together each one of these shows so that we can bring you honest, credible information. So basically, instead of a talking head with a camera, I'm a journalist who happens to turn on the camera. Make sense? Big difference. So
It makes sense to me.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Andy. Absolutely. So,
who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. So,
you.
So thank you everyone who's tuning in. And so let's get right into it. We saw last week, and I saw the comments that Vice President Kamala Harris made while she was in Chicago, talking about the next wars will not be fought over oil, but over water. And then I sat back and watched some of my colleagues and some of corporate media talk about her comments in the context of the war machine. And I kind of tilted my head and went, that was the wrong way to take that. And I think that, I think that was the American centric view because it's all about us, right? So I was looking at it the perspective of, gee, I wonder what the rest of the world was going to think when they hear that, and that's exactly the take that I want to go with this morning.
Are you suggesting, Kerri, that the opening to that monologue should have been, and when we go to war, and we will go to war?
Well, and those were the words that everybody heard, was when we go to war, which the premise of this entire show is we're already at war. She just said it out loud. So, hey, Pamela, good morning. Good morning to you. So with this one, I think we're gonna go through and explore how we're already at war, and you as the little people, you're losing because you didn't know you were in this war, but the rest of the world knows. And so I want to lead with a broadcast, right? So you have U.S. mainstream media and our allies. No offense, Canada, but you guys did it too.
Guilty.
You took the take of we're going to war. Oh no, here goes the US again, saber rattling. So I want to start with a very small snippet of a broadcast from India. This is India in the Asian continent and how they took her comments. And I think that shout out to this Indian broadcast because they, like the rest of the world, understood what the lead was on this story. So Andy, if you wouldn't mind queuing that up, it's only about a minute long.
As world is facing water shortage, Vice President of United States Kamala Harris said that wars will be fought over water in the near future. She stated, and I quote, "You know, for years and generations, wars have been fought over oil. In a short matter of time, they will be fought over water. Remember, water is being traded on the Wall Street commodities futures market. Due to its scarcity, the price of the vital liquid will fluctuate just like oil, gold, or wheat."
For years and generations, wars have been fought over oil. In a short matter of time, they will be fought over water. So when we think about building up our economy around our infrastructure on something like water policy, it's literally about jobs. It's about the fundamental source of life that Tammy Duckworth was talking about. It will sustain life. And it's about strengthening up our nation around a commodity that is a precious commodity.
Oh, the future looks bright, doesn't it, Kerri?
Right. So
pandemics in gear. The U.S. war machine drops a gear. Oh, the future looks bright.
Well, and this is kind of where we're at, right? So it reminds me of those maps that you see at the mall. You are here, which by the way, the malls are dying now too, which yeah, that's a whole nother story about what to do with the malls, because I think there's some great ideas, but I digress. Let's get back to this water issue because it's pretty big. So here you have a small Indian broadcast talking about, wait a second, the US is talking about going to war. And oh, by the way, during the last summer, do you know how many Indian people died because they didn't have access to water and there was a massive heat wave going on? Of course, they're going to look at this like, what the fuck, US? What are you doing? What are you going to mess with now? And then you had, when I looked at the chat that went with this broadcast, there were a number of people from the Indian continent who were saying, yeah, this is why China invaded parts of the Himalayan countries so that they could get access to the runoff from the snowmelt. And they are totally woke. They understand exactly what's going on, but we don't here in the US. So I want to take it from the global perspective of what our vice president said into the context of the US, because we get caught up in that whole perspective. Well, it's happening over there. It's over there. It's over there. It's not us. And I want to show you that not only is it us, but it's been happening in your neighborhood for years. And just let me pose this question. I want you to consider this as we go through all of these pieces. How much is your house worth if you have no water?
That would be a big fat zero.
That would be a zero. And that is the context that I really want you to kind of sit with the information that we're going to provide this morning. And obviously, this is not a comprehensive look. This is just a small snippet to kind of get you interested in, hey, this is what's actually going on here. So let's start with water is not life. Water is now a commodity, a tradable, profitable commodity. So Andy, this will be the first graphic. And those of you who were dealing with a global pandemic and loss of wages and all the other stuff that was going on over the last year, you might have missed this one. So during the pandemic, we were still struggling with water issues and how things work. And if you recall, California had a massive 6-year, I think it was a 6-year drought. And so they were still reeling from some of that. They did get some relief, but it's still, water is down all over the place, right? So what California decided to do was start using water futures as a commodity investment. So their whole idea was that, well, now cities and farmers can buy futures in California's water, meaning they can hedge against or bet on rising water prices out west. So let me explain what that means here. If you're a farmer and you have crops and you get a certain amount of water that you are allowed to use from the public sources and you don't get enough, now you can use all of these massive amounts of funds that you just have laying around and invest it in water futures in the California stock market, so that if your crops fail because of drought or you're not getting the water that you need to supply your fields, you can make money off of failing. So it's not just your own insurance, but now from all of the stock that you can buy, you can get money from that. Sounds like a great idea, but wait, farmers.
But wait, there's more.
Right, farmers don't have that kind of money laying around. And oh, by the way, if the farmers' fields fail, that fails us too, right? This is our food supply we're talking about. It's our food supply. And all right, I feel the vegans out there going, yeah, but, and I got something for you. We're going to put that in perspective. I know a lot of people say, well, it's the cows or it's the meat production. And hold that thought, because I thought you were right when I started this. The data does not support that. So yell at me in a second, but we'll go through all of that. So in California, in December of 2020, they decided that we're going to take water futures and put this up as a stock so that everybody with all of this extra cash that you have laying around after you paid rent, you can invest in the futures. And they listed it on the NASDAQ as VELES California, VELES California, the water index. So it's just like gold and silver and all of those things that you absolutely need to survive. Water is now listed as a commodity, right? Because you absolutely need gold. So water now has been placed in this same bucket. And then in January 2020, Chicago's Mercantile Exchange, which was started from back of the yards with agriculture and meat production, the Merc decided in 2021, yeah, we're going to get down with that. We're going to allow all of this investment. And so now the Chicago Exchange is totally on board. Here's the problem. And Andy, tell me if you can figure out why this might be a problem. So of those investors, you have hedge fund managers and billionaire Wall Street investors who they themselves have an interest and can control water rights as a whole. Now they're betting on hedges.
I don't see any problem with that.
Really, Andy? Really? Come on.
Kind of like when the banking industry combined with the securities industry.
Yeah.
Kind of like a conflict of interest.
Well, basically what they can do is I'm gonna short the sales, and then I'm gonna go behind the scenes and make an investment in something else that makes sure that my short bid comes in, so I make money off the whole and screw those people.
Kind of like shorting the stonks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all those things, if you were in the Wall Street bets and you were shorting and you were squeezing the shorts, this is the exact same thing, but with water, and water for millions of families. What could possibly go wrong here? And I'm laughing, but it's really serious because they literally straight face put this out in December in a pandemic where they have a massive housing crisis, and they've just come off of a drought and then had the worst wildfires in state history. So of course, this totally makes sense. And I think, Andy, at the show opening, which you said they're running out of things to profit off of. Yeah, this is where we're at.
Yeah. The Scorpion just couldn't help himself.
No.
Sting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So people are still going to think, well, that's over there, right? How does that really affect me? I turn on my tap, my water's fine. There
couldn't possibly affect us here, Kerri.
Yeah, I know. All right, so let's put up that second graphic.
Okay.
So this is water as a commodity now. And this is from the UN report. So for those of you who forgot, because last year was, the equivalent of 10 years, we almost lost Australia as a continent because of their wildfires. We lost people all across Southeast Asia. The water supplies in South Africa, where they hit the D-Day, where all of it was really at risk. And oh, by the way, Flint is still happening in the US. Flint, Chicago, you also have rusty pipes and questionable drinking water. And then Andy and I did a story about South Carolina where they were literally poisoning the wells. So in every state, you have an issue with water. And it's not just in the urban areas, it's rural as well, because wells are coming up with arsenic and other contaminants in it. If you are in if your house happens to be in an area where you're not part of a city, you're kind of outside the city borders, you are paying more to finance the upkeep and upgrades of your pipes that won't happen for another 10 or 20 years. So all of that is on you, while your water quality has absolutely gone down, right?
Right, and let's not forget about fracking.
Fracking is a huge problem. So most houses in the US, are getting water from an aquifer. So I want you to understand that it's an underground reservoir of water. Now, if you live near the Great Lakes, really close to the Great Lakes, you are getting your water from there. And that's an entirely different water war with 3-4 states in agreement about who can use how much water. But then we just moved Foxconn into Wisconsin, and they are not on my corporate list, but I do want you to know that they use millions of gallons and is part of their processing, and then put it right back into the lake. So people in Chicago are getting that water. If you live all up and down the Great Lakes, south of Wisconsin, you're getting that water.
Yes. And we've talked about that a lot.
Right.
Come to Chicago, where it's super fun.
Yeah, super fun sites is what it is. Yeah. So on this graphic, you've got this really handy map. So Andy and I, if you missed the show, and I don't know why you would, but you missed the show months ago.
Happen.
Yeah, things happen. We posted at that time, it was like in September, a map of the US with drought. And that was like September. It was 42% of the entire United States, continental United States, was in drought. So we've had a little bit of rain and a little bit of snow since then, called winter. So this is the current map today. So Montana, Dakotas, California, all parts south, Texas, things like that. And this is April. This is where we are. As we go through, I will, post more maps on this, and you're going to see in the peak growing season, particularly in the Midwest, drought, and then flooding. So all of this is part of climate change, and this is part of what this graphic is describing for the rest of the world. But here in the United States, we are already being affected. And when I mentioned your aquifer, particularly in the Midwest, when you are now getting the deluge storms, not those nice little spring storms that we used to have, but the huge downpours, what happens to your aquifer is it doesn't get recharged. The water does not recharge into the aquifer because of that deluge of rain. It's just too fast. It's floodwater.
It doesn't absorb. It rolls. It rolls to the low point.
Right. Exactly. So when I ask the question, how much is your house worth if you have no water? So what I would invite you to do is go and check with your city, with your county, and see what the recharge is, because there are organizations and departments within your county who are charged with monitoring that. And they monitor it not only month to month, but year to year. So you can go out and pull the charts and see, where is your aquifer? How is it performing? And oh, by the way, which corporation is trying to get access to that aquifer? Because that's important. And that is part of the all-out assault on our water supply, particularly here in the US, because we'll sell anything to anybody, apparently. So up on this graphic, you can just see some pretty good stats. And let's be honest, if you're an American, you really don't give a shit. Let's be honest, right? So 700 million people worldwide could be displaced by intense water scarcity. The only reason that you might care about that is because immigrants crossing the border, right?
Because they can't live in their countries.
Yeah.
Well, and we've seen that, right? Last summer and the summer before that, there are now places in Asia along the equator that can no longer support human life, right? And that's a big problem, especially when you understand that it's not just human beings that can't live there, it's all animal life. And so the animals will leave those areas. They'll move away from them, and there's less space on the earth to live. So the animals and the human beings are in much closer proximity than they used to be. And why is that important? Well, you may have heard of this pandemic.
Right.
And so we have issues now where human beings are much more susceptible to being infected with diseases like COVID because they have to live in smaller regions because of climate change.
Yeah, that's exactly. So all of this, you remember from your elementary science class, the ecosystem and the balance and how it's important. Yeah. So to put it in context of our vice president talking about going to war over water, do you see why the rest of the world might be like, what the hell? What is going on? So yeah, this is exactly what's going on. And if you think a border wall is going to do the trick, no. So what you're really talking about is a border wall with heavily armed machine guns and everything else, just gunning down millions of people. Millions. What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly.
So there's that. Okay, so what do we do about it? And I thought this was really interesting because California, as I mentioned, was going through a 6-7 year drought. They were really struggling, and golf courses are really hard to hit. So what LA County tried to do was they put out memos, they put out letters, they did an entire campaign, reduce your water, this type of thing. So for those of you who are getting ready for your spring lawn care season, this is really going to hurt a little bit, right? So what they actually did was they gave everybody a specific allotment. Everybody was supposed to do their part and pull their, all these analogies are going through my head, but bootstraps and tighten your belt a little bit, maybe you don't water your lawn, or maybe you don't do certain things, or maybe you take a shower and not a bath. All of these things, they were supposed to reduce their usage. And they had some outliers who were refusing to do this. So Andy, this is the next graphic, fines and waste. So here's an effort that LA County tried to put together. And when people still weren't listening, they didn't care, they tuned it out. Oh, I didn't get the memo. They started fining people. And I thought it was really interesting because the people that they were fining were not, the 98 percenters, 99 percenters. It was the wealthy elite who were like, oh, the rules don't apply to me. How often do we see that? So I put in here, this 2004 UCLA study showed that the wealthier neighborhoods typically consume 3 times more water than less affluent ones. Of course they do, because it doesn't apply to them. And we see this in parts of Utah where they're trying to build golf courses in the desert and want to have all of the water usage to support grass in the desert for a golf course, which affects not only parts of Utah, but everybody downriver. They're not getting it. What they're looking at is, we want to bring more affluent people out here, and we want to have nice green lawns because that's what they want. So this is the exact same thing that was going on in LA. And there were a couple of things in here that I wanted to point out because I thought that they were very telling. So in 2016, philanthropist David Geffen used 27,000 gallons of water a day. 27,000 gallons of water a day. That's 27,000 people that could have survived on a gallon of water a day. And that's roughly 60 times what an average Los Angeles family uses. So we are still at the far end of the spectrum, even as an average family compared to the rest of the world. That's an interesting statistics. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about that is, now I don't know David Geffen. I'm not going to even pretend that I do. But here we have a philanthropist using, maybe 10, 20% of their net worth to do some good. So we tend to overlook them, right? And then on the flip side, they're doing some really shitty things. But
that's a hell of a lot of toilet flushes.
Right. Well,
that's with some major gastrointestinal problems. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, 27,000 gallons of water a day is to support his lawn.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Right. So I don't know. AstroTurf is a thing. In fact, I am currently looking at AstroTurf for a specific area out here in the desert because I want it green and I want it soft. But I'm not stupid enough to think that you should grow grass in the desert. That's dumb. That's just dumb. And then, I don't.
And apparently very wasteful.
Apparently, I mean, AstroTurf is so cheap, and you don't have to mow it, and the water goes right through it into the ground if it rains. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? It's just. Yeah, so I don't have to spend my Saturday putting chemicals on my lawn and mowing it, whatever. It's just there. It's awesome. So, and they make biodegradable AstroTurf now, by the way. So the other one, and I love this actress, Amy Poehler. She was also charged, and this is what I thought was funny, was she was charged for water usage at one of her properties, which exceeded 170,000 gallons for the month. Just one. So if you have any idea of what the income inequality looks like, just one of her houses used 170,000 gallons.
It makes you wonder, is she a fish?
No, I don't know. I don't know. So what happened with a lot of these people who got fined is they're like, there was a water pipe leak. Nah, y'all didn't have leaky water. That's enough to fill several pools. I think you would notice that you had a leaky water pipe, but maybe. So this last one I thought was really fascinating because Joffrey Palmer, he's a real estate developer in Los Angeles. and his household used more than 12,000 gallons of water per day at a total cost of $12,000. So you would think that this dude would know something happened, right? But this guy, so when you start to look into who this Poehler dude is, he's a bad dude. So he is the slumlord extraordinaire for Los Angeles. And he is a guy who likes to get permits and state funding for low-income community housing. He calls it inclusionary housing, except he will put these up right next to a major freeway. And we know how bad traffic is and everything in Los Angeles. So all of his properties have been nicknamed Black Lung Lofts. And he's totally making profit from them. So if you want to live here, hey, go ahead and live here. It's lower income, but you're probably going to die in a few years because of the freeway jeopardizing health, particularly for children, pregnant women, the infirm, seniors, all the people who would need a lower rent housing. So he's putting them in there, just taking the money off them, taking the money off the federal and state, all of these sort of things. So he has been hit with class action suit after action suit, but they keep approving his permits. So what's going on, LA? In 2019, Poehler was hit with yet another class action lawsuit because he was keeping millions of dollars in rent security deposits. That's the deposit that you need to move in. He was just keeping them and banking them. And then when you move out, he would come up with, all the bullshit reasons why they couldn't return it to you. Oh, there's a stain in the carpet or whatever else. So he got hit with that class action lawsuit. But then most recently, the Proposition 10, this was a statewide ballot measure that would have expanded rent control in California. Poehler, in all of his money, helped support Proposition 10 opponents to keep statewide rent control from entering into the California law. He did TV ad campaigns and tricked and confused voters, all of these things, and did all of these lobbying efforts with civic leaders, elected leaders. He did all of that so that he can maintain his profits. And then during the November elections, he's also under investigation for laundering money to the Trump campaign, as well as having all of his employees donate to the Trump campaign and then reimbursing them illegally. So this guy is, he's just a gem.
Maybe that's why he's using so much water, is because of all the laundry he's doing.
Yeah, he's laundering a lot of money. So what I thought was hilarious in a sad way. His thought on the water crisis and all of these things just went to this one quote. When he got hit with this fine, he said, a small lobby of special interest controls water. Wouldn't you be willing to pay a little bit more for walnuts and pistachios and see your lawn and landscape go dead? Okay, so the small special lobbyist, that's you. He's talking about you. He's talking about indigenous tribal land control water. He's talking about farmers. You are the small lobby of special interest that he is fighting against, so that he can maintain a green landscape for his little palace. So yeah, it's something else. And I will admit that here in New Mexico, we have a little bit of a right-wing corporatist news outlet who just published something about the state could lose its control of its own water. And when you read the article, it was about Navajo Nation. They have controlling water rights for the Rio and a lot of other rivers that come through. And all of that goes back to the treaties. So if you're going to be somebody who supports, the U.S. Constitution, I have you look up Article 6. And what this article did not, the news article did not cover was states cannot negotiate with other sovereign nations. You can have a sister city, you can have, some relationship with another city in another country, but you cannot negotiate with another country. Navajo Nation and tribal nations are sovereign nations. So the states cannot negotiate water rights with, like in our case, the Navajo Nation. That's a federal issue. So when you see articles come out about your state is about to lose its right, your state never had the right to negotiate treaties for water rights with indigenous tribes. So I just want to make that point as a sidebar. So when you start to see these things come down in California, in Utah, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, yeah, we have already agreements with indigenous people, and through their kindness, we get to sit down at the table with them every once in a while and talk about, okay, we've got farmers that need land. Oh, by the way, there's a development over here that wants to do a golf course. They'd like some water, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind as we go through this. All of it is basically a bait and switch on your water rights as a person of the United States, of your state, who has an expectation that you should get some water based on what you pay for in your municipality and based on the property taxes that you pay at a state level. So all of that is up there. So, hey, good morning, Mike. Happy Monday to you. Then Mike posts the comment, some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here. So in the profitability, water as a commodity, this is what's actually going to happen, because none of these conversations that they're having when it comes to commodities have anything to do with you or I. It's all about Wall Street. It's about these big investment firms. It's about hedging. It's about, the one percenters who want to have green lawns and will pay just a little bit more for walnuts and pistachios. So I focused in on that comment because I wanted to see, what is actually using the most water when it comes to the industrialization conversation about water. So Andy, if you wouldn't mind, sir, industrial waste is what we're going to call this. And this is where my vegans and my vegetarians are really going to get a little pissed off at me, because I went out and found the data and I posted a link to the data there. And what was this? Mike says, you all ever seen Tank Girl? Yeah, it's going to be like that. I haven't seen it. So I got to go see it. Thank you for that, Mike. But
and so, there's Mad Max.
Yes, Mad. Yeah. I think I'd do good with Mohawk. I don't know, maybe. But so here's the data on what our industries are actually using here, and this I thought was interesting. And part of this comes back to you as the individual. Obviously, the powers that be and the 1% and 2%ers don't give a shit about us. But there are some things that we can do to help forestall our own demise and that of our family members. And so here are some of the things that you might consider. The beverage industry. Now, this is beer, soda, coffee, things like that. So it's anywhere from 180 to 328 gallons of water is used to produce a 2-liter bottle of soda. That's your soda pop, your cola. That's a lot of water. 20 gallons of water to make a pint of beer. That's a lot. Oh boy, that one kind of hurts a little bit, especially, oh my Guinness. Okay, that's a lot of water for a pint of Guinness. And then 37 gallons of water to produce the ingredients to make a single cup of coffee. I am so screwed. So coffee is life in my house. So this is something I really need to take a look at. Can I cut back a little bit on my consumption of coffee? Because all of this is the water it takes to grow the coffee, the beans to process, all of these sort of things. What can I do to maybe forestall this a little bit? At the same time, I'm going to be pushing back on my legislature and all of these permits to for-profit golf courses. Fuck those guys. Why do you need grass on a golf course? All right, so then the automotive industry. I thought this was interesting because they were not one that I expected to see at the top of the list, but 39,000 gallons of water is used to produce the average domestic vehicle. That's, whatever the country of origin is for the company where it's made. So Toyota and Honda have plants in the South in the US. That's 39,000 gallons of water for one single vehicle. This is the other one I thought was interesting. A pair of jeans, your Levi's or whatever it is you're sporting, is about 3,000 gallons of water, and that is to grow the cotton and then the dyeing process for the fabric. So all of these things are using up some of our water. So here's where the vegans are really going to get a little upset. At the top of the list for crops and agricultural use for water was all fruits and vegetables. Those were the big ones. And this largely comes from factory farms and things like this. So topping that list was wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and sugarcane or sugar beets. So all that sweet stuff that you like, that's using up most of your water. And that was by far the worst consumers of water, respectively. I mean, it's still food products, but respectively far over meat production. In fact, meat production was only about 29% of the whole for agriculture. And by meat production, I mean cattle, goat, chicken, all of those things. All of it was only 29% of the agricultural use, with wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and sugary products as the top of it. Why sugarcane and beets? Because they require a lot of water. And oh, by the way, you need those in soda and high fructose corn syrup and all of those other products. So this is part of where our water is going when we have industrial farms who are supplying other industries. So just kind of put that in perspective. Okay. Beer is the most efficient is Mike's pushback. Thank you, Mike. And he says, ditch coffee and replace it with beer. Instant water savings. You know what? I'm kind of in line with that because you can survive just fine off a glass of Guinness. It's like drinking oatmeal. So maybe I'll start doing that.
And the side effects are nice too.
Yeah, you're so mellow. Everything's great.
Well, and I think that demonstrates that by far the worst offender is the soda industry, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen that single-handedly almost is responsible for a huge part of the obesity problem in society now. Mm-hmm. The problem is that those companies have diversified into so many different food categories, and they've become so huge that they are almost as powerful in terms of lobbying as any of the huge mega, fossil fuels or pharmaceutical or health insurance or any of those industries, right? So they control the messaging, drink Coca-Cola because it'll make your life better.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, everybody's always happy when they're sharing a Coke with your friend or whatever. But so look at their response to the Georgia boycotts. They went, everybody but us. So this is, I present these things to you as, okay, we as individuals, 98%, we are absolutely losing this water war. But these are small things that you can do, but with your dollars, right? Because all of us together, especially when it came to the boycott in Georgia, all of us together scared the shit out of these people. So if we all decided, okay, maybe instead of buying a case of soda, I'm just going to buy a 6-pack and I'm just going to make that go through the week. And then next week or 2 weeks from now, I'm going to reduce it even more. So these are things that you can do. I'm asking you to consider it. And beer instead of coffee in the morning, maybe you do that. Just a little bit, half a glass. I don't know, but these are things.
Welcome to Hair of the Dog.
Right. Have another round. But yeah, these are things you can do. And then I also mentioned, I know living in the Midwest for many, many years, we were all gearing up to put down grass seed. Why are we putting grass seed on our lawns? Why would you do that? And if your local municipality won't allow you to turn your front yard into a garden, go change it. Go sit at the meeting and change it. Propose the change. You can do these things so that a garden that produces food is going to save you and your neighbors. Plus, that water that you're using is going toward food production for people. And then, oh, by the way, if you haven't already started looking into water recapture to water that garden from your roof, maybe you should, because there are things out there right now to help you do that. The minute you turn on your municipal water to water your lawn or your garden, you are contributing to the problem. And while there's very little that we can do about a Coca-Cola other than reducing our spending, this is one thing that you can do. And this is the power of all of us. So, obviously, we are not the biggest polluters. We are not the biggest problem. It's these other folks who obviously, based on this UCLA study, don't give a shit. But we're the ones who always suffer. We're at the bottom of the tier here. We're the ones who always suffer. It's your family, your household, everything that you work for that's at risk. So this is why I wanted you to see it. All right, so one comment here. Mike says, whoops, just lost it. So Mike says, who remembers this ad? Oh, I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love, grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves. I'm not going to sing it, but I can hear the song in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to buy the world a home. Yeah. That's, it's the real thing, right? So yeah, those ads are so super effective, and they sell hope and they sell happiness, but the reality is it is literally killing us. So the biggest one on my radar, and I hope it's the biggest one on yours, is this last one. By means not the only one, but the last one, and this is Nestle. So Andy, would you mind putting up that graphic?
You betcha.
So I highlighted a couple of the permits that have recently gone into effect for Nestle, but I guarantee you Nestle is already in your state. Doesn't matter where you live, Nestle has already garnered a permit to take water from, remember that aquifer I talked about? They're taking water from your aquifer and they're privatizing it to make a profit. That is what's happening with this one company alone. So I just highlighted some of these, and these were not even the worst offenses of their water uses. These were just the recent ones. So Michigan, yet again, granted a permit, and this was under Rick Snyder. It started under Rick Snyder, just went into effect. It allows Nestle to withdraw up to 400 gallons per minute. 400 gallons per minute, or 576,000 gallons a day, to supply its bottling operation in exchange for a $200 fee. So in Michigan, this one area alone at the top of the chain that feeds down into places like Flint, Detroit, and everything else, Nestle gets first crack at it. And that's what they were allowed to do. And the exchange was $200.
And that water is an orange.
Right, exactly. So yeah, we have turned private. Obviously, water isn't life. Judge us by our actions, right? So if water was life, we wouldn't be doing this shit. Water is profit. And if you didn't understand that water was profit and a commodity and always has been, this is the prime example for you. California. So we talked about California under a 6-year drought, massive wildfires, the biggest in state history. And during this entire time, California was giving them 1 billion with a B, gallons of water. Do you hear that? So in California, it was always a commodity, always for profit. And yeah, Mike brings up a point. He said, bottled water companies don't produce water, they produce plastic bottles. Yes, they do. because they did. That's all they produce. They steal your water, filter it, and then put it in their plastic bottles. This was the other one that I was hopeful on this, because Florida, if anybody in Florida doesn't understand their aquifers and their springs and how precious they are, they're really not paying any attention. So there was a big fight on this one in Guinea Springs, just southeast of Tampa. Beautiful springs, and they support not only tourism but the local economy, plus drinking water and all of these sort of things. So they had local activists and homeowners and all of these people trying to stop this permit in Florida. And I just looked it up. It was just approved. So the city council in and around Guinea Springs went against all of their own people and gave this permit to Nestle. And that's 1 million gallons of water a day. So 400 million gallons of water per year from Florida's fragile ecosystem, Guinea Springs. And Guinea Springs was just starting to recover from some major issues that had happened to the ecosystem, to the spring-fed wells, all of these things, just starting to recover. And this is part of why people were pushing back, please don't give them this permit. Well, they did it anyway. Here it is. And what I thought was very interesting in this was when people in California during the drought and during the wildfires pushed back on Nestle, they posted their statement. I took this directly from their website, their FAQ website. So Nestle's response to the pushback in California was, because people need water to drink, the water we use to make our products is not wasted. It is used efficiently and effectively and bottled so that it can be drunk as part of a healthy diet. That was their response. So they recognize that water is life, but they're going to make a profit off it, and they're going to funnel it through their supply chain, bottle it, and put it back in your community. So like Flint is a prime example. When the people of Flint didn't have water, what was happening? We were giving them bottled water. The cities were buying bottled water.
They still are.
Well, you're right. We're still delivering it to them in bottled water. So all of this is turning the private industry into the sole supplier. We went from the public good to the privatization of water. If you don't understand that we have been at war with this for years, you weren't paying any attention, because the first salvo was fired by Nestle 15 years ago. Excuse me. So this is how long we've been at this, and we have been looking the other way. And I want to go back to VP Kamala Harris's comments when she talked about water in her longer commentary. What was the first thing she talked about? She talked about jobs. She talked about jobs. She was talking about companies like Nestle. She wasn't talking about you and I. She was talking about winning the war for Nestle. And that, I think, is the overarching point here. So, Andy, where am I wrong? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously that and we see this in capitalist society, right? That there is also a expectation of growth. And if that expectation of growth isn't there, then the companies are stagnant and they look like they're not getting to the point of profitability that they should be, and then you have de-investment from stockholders, from shareholders, right? The whole capitalist idea of GDP, and GDP is an absolutely horrible way to gauge your society's progress, right? It just is, without getting into the huge crux of that, right? But capitalism demands a growth in GDP. The problem is, in order to continue to grow in that index, it means the detriment of society. It literally means the death of human beings and the destruction of human beings' ability to live on this planet, right? Which is why when we talk about late stage capitalism or nth stage capitalism, it's because there is nothing left to exploit, right? And that's the model that is currently prevalent everywhere in the world, right? Why are we seeing all of these things happen? Why, although we know that climate change is real and the world is being destroyed by it for us, why does it continue? And it's all about just greed. And it's all about just unfettered capitalist neoliberal greed about people just wanting to enrich themselves. And of course, the answer to that is, well, when it all comes down to it, you're not going to be able to eat your money.
That's what a salient point, and I appreciate that tremendously. And I just want to add to this. This is my following opinion does not reflect all of Hair of the Dog.
But, oh, sure it does.
Okay. I'm going to push back on other leftist media on this one, because all of you were so fast to jump on the warmonger train that you didn't think this thing through. And rather than reporting on the issues that actually affect regular folks, you went to the easy target of the warmonger. And I really need you all to do a better job when we're talking about these things in context of the human condition for the 98%, the people that you're supposed to be supporting with your reporting. I didn't see any of you doing this and doing the deeper dive on it, and I really need you to do it. So you need to decide right now if you're going to be clickbait and just go for the profiteering, just like the corporatists, just like these neoliberals, and use the leftist position to do it. If you do, hey, that's your choice. That's on you. But if you're going to turn on a camera and profess to have a valid opinion about things in the progressive space, do your damn homework. This is not playtime. We are running out of time. Obviously, you can see this. So I need all of you to do a little bit better job other than, hey, I was right, and hey, I've got an opinion, and this, that, and everything else. Please help educate all of us on what we can do, and then the pushback on some of these neoliberal policies, because our lives depend on it. Too many people are suffering and dying because of it. So you are supposed to be the vanguard. Do it. So
exactly. If you want an example, right now there are meetings in Washington with lobbyists for the large pharmaceutical companies that have created vaccines for COVID, right? Washington is asking them to drop the patents on the vaccines so other countries, other corporations can make them, so that we can try to save more people in the world. And the lobbyists for these large corporations have pushed back. And part of their argument is, well, if we do that, that means that countries like Russia and China will have the ability to use these mRNA vaccines to maybe create things that will combat other vaccines and maybe have new treatments for cancer. We can't have that.
Oh,
what?
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Okay, so on that note, happy Monday to everybody. But you got to be informed. You got to know what's going on, and have a clear perspective on what the world around you really looks like. So I hope that this has shed some light on it, and we will continue to do effective, honest reporting and try to bring you some ideas on things that you personally can do, and maybe the pushback that you give to your representative, particularly at state level and in Congress. So this is what we do. But
yes, and we will continue to do it until we run out of water.
That's exactly right. Me first. But all right, take us out. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Kerri. That was a really wonderful display of investigation that you've done on this. And we are going to get right back into it on Wednesday morning, bright and early, 10 o'clock. hopefully we'll see you then. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog.